There were times I was looking at myself in the mirror going, dude, why are you putting on khakis?
Where Gunny Hawley, who was blown up and killed, who had 2 children, I lived in a reality for about, I think, 15 years that it should have been me.
Your source of strength has never been you. It has always been from somewhere else. It's just my belief that mine is from God. And I choose to rely on God. And I'm far from perfect. I screw up all the time. But my life is at peace. I have found a point past the storm where I am at peace.
When things got really bad, which they will, we all are going to have times in our life where we just can't handle some things. To know that reaching out for help is an option. It's the same as going to the doctor when you can't get over the common cold and it's turned into something crazy.
Yep.
Or sinus infection. You got to go to a doctor and get medicine. It's the same with your mental health.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Bunkhouse live here on Military Broadcast Radio, where we give veterans a voice. Today's guest I have is going to be Jack Hager. We'll bring him on here in a minute. But before I do, if you could please follow the URL, the link tree that's down here scrolling, but at the bottom of the screen, find any platform that I'm sharing any kind of content on, like it, follow it, share it, please. Get as many people on here as you can. Also, before we get started, as I always like to start out with, if anybody out there is having any issues or having problems, just know that you're not alone. There's going to be help out there for you. If you could dial 988 and use option 1 for all the veteran crisis helplines. So again, you're not alone. All right. And so I'll go ahead and bring on my guest, Jack. Hey, Jack, and welcome to the Bunkhouse. How's it going?
It is going great because I get to talk to you.
Good,
number one, I appreciate the fact that the program exists. And number two, I appreciate you being alerted to my availability by a mutual friend, and I'm excited about doing this.
No, thank you, and I thank you for being available today. If you could go ahead and give everybody kind of a little bit of a background on you, introduction or so. Tell us what you did and when you served.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit because I was an Army brat. I graduated high school in 1965. Yes, I am older than dirt, but I moved out when I was 14 doing dumb stuff. And so I was on my own, but I played it safe, and I never flashed my gun, never flashed the drugs, never flashed anything. Yeah. Graduated from high school, was given a couple of scholarships, but I said to myself, I don't want to go to no more school. But at the same time, 1965, Vietnam was starting to get a little hot and heavy. And I said, I don't want to get dead neither. So I went down and talked to a Navy recruiter first. Wasn't too impressed. Talked to an Army recruiter, took the test. And after a couple of days, he said, Mr. Hager, you are exactly what the Army Security Agency is looking for. And if you enlist for 4 years, you probably won't even go overseas, much less go to Vietnam. I fell for it, went to basic training, went to AIT, went to intelligence, the ultimate oxymoron, military intelligence. Went to intelligence school in Fort Devens, Mass. Got on a jet, went to the Republic of South Korea for 25 months. South Korea, when I was in high school, I couldn't even pronounce marijuana. It was something that was still downtown LA, hadn't quite come over the hill. My drug of choice was Coors, Jack Daniels, and Johnny Walker Red. I don't know if I would be classified as an alcoholic when I graduated, but I think I was. Korea, I introduced myself to weed, not because of the Army, but because I was in Korea. It was readily available. I liked it, smoked grass for a while. My dream at that time, it was a year-long tour. I extended for a year. I wanted to extend again and finish out my tour in Korea and stay in Korea, hook up with a Korean chick, open a bar, and stay there the rest of my life. The military wouldn't let me. So on my dream sheet, I put in for Thule, Greenland, Sinop, Turkey, and some other place. I can't remember which were so-called hardship tours because I still didn't want to go to Vietnam. So the military, in its never-ending wisdom, sent me to Germany, which is typically a 3-year tour. I report to the CO in Germany. He looks at me and he says, I see you're an E5. And I, yes, sir. You're on your first enlistment. Yes, sir. You don't deserve your stripes, and I'm going to do everything I can to bust you. Right away, I knew I wasn't going to like this guy. And please, you in the audience, listen carefully. This is 1968. He happened to be an African American, so it was a different time zone. I don't know if he didn't like me because I was white or because he genuinely didn't like the fact that I was given my stripes. And in truth, I was, because we were in the same theater as Vietnam. They had stripes to give away. They asked me to go to an E6 board, and I said, I am not going to get on a helicopter and come to Saigon to get an E6 board.
Okay.
Anyway, at that time, the Russians were good enough to invade Czechoslovakia. So 2 weeks ahead of time, we went out in the field. And during that time, I 1049 volunteered to go to Vietnam, not because I wanted to be a hero, but because there are only 2 ways out of Germany. Either go to Nam or re-enlist, and I wouldn't re-enlist for 2 days for a 3-day pass. So I went to Nam, did my stuff there, introduced myself to some other kind of drugs, got out of the military in July 1969, honorably discharged. In no way do I regret my military service. I regret the way in which we gave away Vietnam, but that may be another story for another time. I loved Korea. I hated Germany. Vietnam was a high, was a rush, as only people that have been in combat. And I wasn't on the front lines, but I was attached to the 11th Armored Cav. So I would sit there in the turret with a 50 caliber machine gun. Couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with the 50, but it sure could scare the snot out of people. I don't regret my military service. I don't blame my military service for my screwed up life. I'm really big on personal responsibility. Certainly things contribute to the choices we make, but we all have the power of choice. And it's kind of got that don't do the crime if you can't do the time type stuff. So I am empathetic and sympathetic to people that are going through stuff, but at some point you got to take charge of your life, do everything you can to stabilize. But at some point you got to take that charge and move ahead.
Yeah, I could definitely tell. So like, I can only speak to like my generation of service member and how it was when we came home from deployments and whenever we transitioned out of the military. What were some things that kind of caught you off guard or surprised you about transitioning during that time? Because I know from my uncle
we
and
were
some
aware, July 1969, we were aware, and we probably were briefed, I don't know, of the anti-military sentiments in the United States. And I didn't understand it then. I'm not sure I understand it now. I'm just very, very grateful that even the people that were against Iraq and Afghanistan, et cetera, were not against the warrior. And I'm very glad of that. I think like most protests, the majority of people had no idea what they were doing there. They were just having a party. But we landed at Travis. Somehow a bunch of protesters had gotten on the field. The air police and the military police and some other people were trying to make a corridor through them. So for like an hour, we're sitting on this jet. And finally they opened the door, and I was about halfway back. I hit the door, and the first round eye I see is a stone cold, beautiful blonde girl, probably 18 years old. And she's screaming at the top of her lungs, "How many babies did you kill in Vietnam?" I ignored her. You'll like this. There was a grizzled Marine behind me, and he said only as many as I could eat. I don't even think she heard him. And we just kept going. I was discharged at that point and told the first thing you do is get out of your uniform. I said, okay. And I got out and hung around San Francisco for a while. 3 days of a daze. I'm not even sure what happened those 3 days, but I got drunk, I got high, I got the other stuff. And after a while I figured, well, I can't party forever. I'm running out of money. And so the readjustment, I'm sure it was tougher for other people than it was for me. I think maybe it helped me, the fact that I was an Army brat and moved around a lot. and never had really deep roots. And I guess at that point, I would say I was at hate with America simply because of the idiocy. I was in Korea when the North Koreans swiped the Pueblo, that probably 98% of your listeners have no idea what I'm talking about. That was the most scared I've ever been in my life. They alerted us that the North Koreans had seized the spy ship, the Pueblo, and I knew that everything we had in South Korea was nuclear, violated everything there was, but I knew that's what we had because of my clearance. And I thought, sure, we were going to go to nuclear war because I knew we weren't going to sell these guys out. Silly me.
Yeah.
We sold them out. And then, as I mentioned, I was in Germany 2 weeks ahead of time. They told us about it. We rolled up on the border and gathered as much intel as we could as the Russians came across the border. Got to Nam a couple months after Tet 68. And it didn't take too long with boots on the ground to realize we were going to lose. We weren't going to lose, but they, the higher ups, were not going to let us win. And because of that, 58,000 names are on a wall in Washington that, in effect, long term died for nothing. They died for their buddies, they died for the guy on the left and the right, but in reality, they died for nothing, in addition to millions of South Vietnamese, Cambodians, Laotians, North Vietnamese, in a disaster that horrifically we repeated in Afghanistan and Iraq. In fact, I don't think I ever had PTSD as such from Vietnam, but that day that we were pulling out of Afghanistan, I don't recall ever being as furious, as mad as I was when I was just seeing Saigon in 1975 all over again.
Yeah, I can actually relate to that a little bit. My first deployment in Afghanistan, we supported 1st Battalion 6 Marines in the offensive into the city of Marja within Helmand Province, and then my second deployment in Afghanistan, I was with 1st Battalion 8th Marines, and we had the Kajaki district up by the at the top of the Helmand River by the dam, and we started turning areas over to the Afghan National Police, and then another battalion came in behind us, and then they finished kind of that turnover in that area to the local army and the local law enforcement. And within, I want to say it was like a year and a half after we had gotten back home, we started seeing reports where the Taliban had came back in, taken over the area, and stuff like that. So I will say, I think I was more angry at seeing those types of things on the news and being in those areas on deployment and seeing stuff like that after the fact. It's just, like you said, it's the ones that you lose over there, the ones that get wounded in action. Like, what was it all for if that's just going to get turned back over to the people that we were there fighting in the first place?
And I'm sure you had the same feelings that we did, that the people, the locals who we said we were going to help, we just left them. And the North Vietnamese took care of ours by dispatching them or putting them in those prison camps. And we've all heard the horrible stories about what happened to those guys and women that worked with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you got out, and so what did you do once you left the Army? What was kind of like, what was the life for Jack years to come after the Army?
You know, how much the 4 years in the Army contributed to this, how much mental stuff was going on that I wasn't aware of, I do not know, because I was usually high. I was, I figured out the only way to eliminate hangovers is stay drunk. And I kind of did. And but I didn't want to stay in the States. So I saw an ad in the San Francisco paper saying, have you recently been honorably discharged? Did you have a top secret clearance? Come see us. So I said, okay. And I got hired as a tech radar interceptor. I couldn't even spell radar, but this was a cost plus thing. And I got hired and went to Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, downrange for the Pacific Missile Range, hung around there and did nothing for like 4 months. Was getting paid ridiculously good. If I would have stayed a year, they would have sent me anywhere in the world for a month and got a terrific bonus. But there was a minor problem with Kwajalein. It was a beautiful place, things to see, but there were no zero zip women except for a few dependents that were surrounded by concertina wire, etc. So I pulled the pin, came back to Hawaii, hung around there for a while, met a girl who was a stewardess. She introduced me to some men she worked for on the side, smuggling. We went to the Oregon. These guys basically interviewed me and they hired me. It wasn't a mafia thing. It wasn't a huge organization. It wasn't a racial thing. We were like the UN. We had blacks and whites and Chicanos. I don't guess that's politically correct to say Chicanos anymore, but I don't care. Just a bunch of guys making all kinds of money, primarily on weed and weapons, but primarily weed. People don't understand now that it's legal in a lot of places how much money you could make smuggling in. And so for several years, I got away with it. And just, everybody's heard those kind of stories, had all kinds of money, more money than I could count, had all kinds of rushes, had all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, looking up in the darkness, thinking, is this it? Is this all there is? Just 40 more or 50 more years, unless I get blown away of doing this. I enjoyed it short term. I enjoyed being high. I enjoyed the other fringe benefits that came. But at the end of the day, is this it? Is this all there is? And I'm not sure what I would have done. I have never contemplated suicide. I'm not disrespecting those people that have. It just, the cliche, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I just, and plus I wasn't sure what was on the other side. So for me, it was never an option. It was never a temptation. But my contemplation, my wondering what to do came to a halt in December of 1973 when I finally got arrested big time. I'd been arrested a couple of times for Mickey Mouse stuff as a kid and a couple of times as an adult where charges were dropped. But in San Angelo, Texas, I was there with my lady and our child. We left a bar around, 9 o'clock at night to go back to the hotel to see if the kid was okay. And all of a sudden she was driving. She said, Jack, there's a cop behind us. I said, don't sweat the small stuff. Go the speed limit a little bit more, see what happens. A few minutes later, they pulled us over. They came on the horn and said, you riding shotgun, get out of the car, slide on your face and do not move. I looked at all the guns. I decided he had an exceedingly good idea. I got out of the car, lay down. A couple of minutes later, they cuffed me, raised me to my feet, charged me. Texas had no charges on me. They were just picking me up on a warrant from Oregon. Most of my charges were from Oregon, a couple from California, a couple federal charges. The same night they popped me, they popped about 20, 25 of the guys in different places. Later on, we found that they had a snitch working with us. A joint interagency narcotics squad was watching us for a while. They finally figured they had enough to get convictions. They busted us. So I stayed in jail in Texas for 4 or 5 months. Then, I don't know if they played rock, paper, scissors to figure out who had first dibs. Oregon had the most charges. I waived extradition. A sheriff came out from Oregon, brought me back to Oregon. A few months later, I pled no contest to a bunch of charges, got sentenced to 10 in Oregon State Prison, did 4. While I was doing that time, California decided they weren't going to prosecute. The feds dropped the charges, which I thought was a great idea. And eventually I made parole, hit the street in 1977. And that was more, even though I was only locked up for 4 years, that was more of an adjustment than coming back from the military was. And I can't even imagine doing 10 years or 20 years and hitting the street. But we know a lot of guys that do that and a lot of girls that do that. But so my quote unquote criminal career came to a screeching halt when I got arrested. I had a spiritual experience with Jesus Christ. Prior to arrest, I had never been in church except for weddings and funerals. I thought Jesus Christ was a swear word. I knew nothing about nothing. But in jail in Texas, they found some drugs, which is not unusual because drugs are easier to get in jail and prison than they are in the street. After a couple of days of being bored, I wasn't looking for God. I was looking for a way out. I was almost excited about going to prison because I'd never been in prison before. And it was going to
Yeah.
be a new experience. I felt like I'd done everything else twice. And I really didn't care. There was a rock song going around at the time that had the line, "Don't want to live, don't want to die." And that's pretty much where I was. I just didn't care about anything. And so I picked up a Bible and started to read it. And during that process, a God who I didn't know existed convinced me he was real. And I got saved, born again, converted, which is my choice, whatever word people want to use. And I recognize not all your listeners can resonate with that, but it was obviously not necessarily obviously, it was to me the second best thing. Being arrested was the second best thing that ever happened to me, because as a result of the arrest, Jesus Christ offered himself to me and I accepted him. And the 4 years in prison were times of spiritual growth. And got out of prison. My first job was a minister of sanitation, otherwise known as a janitor, in a church in California. And then I ended up going to a Bible school in Kansas City. And since late 1978, I've been in full-time vocational youth prison camp church ministry. And here I am, 79 years old, and I'm still doing it. And I'm amazed I get to do what I get to do. I have dealt with depression, am dealing with depression. A few years ago, was diagnosed with blood cancer, Vietnam, the gift that keeps on giving. And I'm trying to differentiate between what is the chemo doing, what is the cancer doing, and what is just being an old fart doing. So there's the only real effect I have from the treatment is fatigue
Yeah.
and brain fog. But is that just because I'm older than dirt, or is it because of the chemo, or a mixture of the two? And so my life, my ministry has been affected primarily by fatigue. A nap is a wonderful thing until you have to take one. And,
Yeah.
so most days I take an hour and a half nap, and I don't move as quick as I used to. I have to watch my balance, some other things. But I'm still kicking. I'm still doing youth work. And, that's the Jack Hager story in a reasonable nutshell.
No, that's awesome, Jack. And I think I've noticed even with my generation and probably even the generations between mine and yours, a lot of times that healing of depression or PTSD, the anxiety, I've found that a lot of us really kind of get drawn to Jesus and God and building that relationship to be part of that healing process to help us get through some of those darker times and some of those hard times. Um, because we figured out the things that we try to do on our own and try to fix it ourselves don't necessarily work and we think they might work at the time, but it's doing us more harm than it is good a lot of times when we try to fix them ourselves, right?
Yeah, and I know you're not, and I don't want to be simplistic. Come to Jesus and all your problems are over. That's crap. That's not
Oh
true.
no, yeah, that is
Jesus didn't die
you're
to make
absolutely
us
right.
healthy and wealthy, et cetera, and so forth. In fact, I would argue, to some degree, being a genuine follower of the genuine Christ is probably going to
Yes,
put a target on you, and in some ways, it's going to be a little tougher. But uh, I am thankful there are other ways, other organizations, other outreaches that are trying to help veterans and others that are dealing with mental stuff. That mental illness is not in the closet like it used to be not too many years ago. That
yeah,
admitting that you have mental stuff is not shameful.
right,
Sure, by some people it still is, but it shouldn't. But the majority of people are aware that it's like cancer, it's an illness.
yeah,
And regardless of what caused it or didn't cause it, it's there. And for a guy or a girl to say, you know what, I'm sick of this. I need to get some help. And obviously, my perspective, I'd love for them to come to faith in Jesus Christ, but I'd love for them, if there's someone listening now who's dealing with it, who has yet to get help, suck it up, dude. Get some help. There
yeah,
are people that love you, that want to help you, that have many who have been there, done that, and you don't have to be in that condition. You don't have to be in that valley. You don't have to be in that darkness. It's not going to be easy, but there are ways out. And every second you delay it is going to make it ever tougher to get out of it.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's part of the what I'm trying to do, and a lot of veterans that I know that are kind of do the same thing with the podcast or some type of online presence and like content creation. That's a lot of that's what we're trying to do is break that stigma, letting everybody know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk about what's going on, because again, a lot of us have, and again, regardless of generation, a lot of us kind of deal with where we go through a lot of the same things, different scenarios that got us to those, but a lot of the same things. We have a lot of anxiety. There's depressive states. There's things that we think about on a regular basis that aren't always the light side of it. There's a lot of dark things that we think about. So, yeah, no, I am happy to see that there are a lot more veterans now that are voicing about mental health and that it is okay to talk about it, that it is okay to get help because I can only imagine what it was like during your time in the Army, but even my time in the Marine Corps in the early 2000s, when we were plussing up in Afghanistan and kind of almost starting to wind down a little bit in Iraq, like um, it was you didn't talk about anything mental health. If you mentioned that you weren't feeling good or weren't you were thinking about certain things in a certain way, like you immediately got labeled as being weak or couldn't provide to the mission anymore, and you just kind of got pushed aside. They didn't really even help you either. They looked at more of a way of getting you out of service completely a lot of times, and just kind of setting you to the side and leaving you behind in a sense. And so a lot of us, again, you probably felt the same way some, and like you just didn't talk about it. You bottled it up. You didn't talk about it, and when things would get overwhelming, you just find other ways to kind of help suppress that, and it's always not the healthiest ways that you find to suppress those types of things.
And I mean, back in my day, and I'm sure back in yours, there's a minority of people who fake the mental stuff trying to get a medical
Yeah.
discharge or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
And they make it bad for everybody that's genuinely struggling with it.
Yeah.
And I am not really happy with those kind of people. But it's true in life too. In civilian life, there are people that are soaking up sympathy
Yeah.
by, yeah, I don't want to be too harsh, but I just, there's a thin line between cynicism and realism. And
Yeah.
I try to be real, and I try to be real myself, and I want people to be real with me. And I don't want to get to where I suspect everybody or wonder if everybody's playing a game. It's sort of kind of like for many years I didn't identify as a non-vet. I
Right.
wasn't ashamed of it, but I just didn't want to. I didn't want to get. I didn't go to VFW. I didn't go to that kind of stuff. Uh, Simply because I didn't want to be in a bar. Number one.
Right.
And in the early days, I knew that there were at least some VFWs that if a non-vet went there, he was hammered by the World War II and Korea guys. You weren't even in a
Yeah.
real war. Right? So I stayed away from that primarily because of alcohol. I knew I was one sip from the sewer. And at the same time, I guess because of Afghanistan and Iraq, I decided, you know what? I'm going to wear a hat. I'm going to wear a shirt. I'm going to do something. Maybe another vet can reach out to me and maybe I can be of encouragement or something to them. And I kicked myself in the butt for not doing it earlier. Sure, I get those attaboys from people that weren't there, that weren't Vietnam vets, that want to kind of make up, like you were saying
Yeah.
earlier, kind of want to make up for the way we were welcomed home. And I appreciate that. And I was just with a friend of mine a couple of days ago at a Chinese restaurant, eating food, and the Chinese waitress came over and said, "No pay, no pay." And I said, "What? Somebody else pay. Somebody else pay." And I say, "Who?" And she said, "Him." And I looked at him and he said, "Oh, she wasn't supposed to tell you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. I want to pick up the bill." And I appreciated that. And I've had that happen a few times. That's not like I told him, "Hey, it's cool. I got this hat for 50 cents at Salvation Army. I've got all kinds of free stuff." And we laughed about it. Oddly enough, he wasn't a vet. He didn't have any relatives that were a vet. He just wanted to thank me for my service and paid for the meal. And that is not the reason I wear the hat, but that's kind of a fringe benefit. but I've connected with a lot of guys and been able to pray with them, been able to point them in a place where they might get help, or just give them a hug and say, welcome home, dude.
Yeah.
And the cancer diagnosis wasn't on my bucket list, but and here it's probably going to get not necessarily controversial, but maybe. I know the VA gets a lot of bad press, but the VA has been stupendous for me. There's a clinic
good.
here in St. Joseph, Missouri, and I had my physical there a few years ago, and they said everything looks good. 2 days later, they called me and they say, you got to get to an ER now. I said, okay. Somehow they missed that my kidneys were operating at like 13%.
Oh, wow.
So I go to Leavenworth, the VA, and they start treating my kidney issue. And in treating that, they discover the blood cancer issue, which may have gone on for months, years before being diagnosed. So I think that kidney thing was kind of a godwink type stuff. So I go to the St. Joseph Clinic, Leavenworth for my kidney stuff, Kansas City for my cancer stuff, and I have not the tiniest complaint. They've been fast, they've been efficient, they've been communicative. I just, I hear these horror stories about people trying to deal with the VA, and I don't know if I'm just lucky, blessed, whatever. And I think some of it is when I first was getting 2 treatments a week, driving down to Kansas City an hour a day, an hour one way, and getting these not horribly painful treatments, but treatments, I would try to talk to the nurses and talk to them and just say, I remember distinctly one young female nurse, she was sticking the needle in me, and it takes 5 minutes for the stuff to get injected. And it's not outrageously painful, but it's happening. And I said, thank you so much for doing this. And she started crying. I said, yo, what's up? And she said, I'm just so used to getting yelled at. And I think a lot of times, like a lot of other things, people think this nurse or this travel agent or this rent-a-car person is the reason for the problem. We scream at them.
Yeah.
I think you kind of get treated the way you treat people. I know there's other horror stories with the VA, but I've just been grateful for the diagnosis because I've been able to meet a lot of VAs a lot of veterans at these places and create some friendships. And, I just assume the cancer went away, but as long as it's here, deal with it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Like a lot of it is how you treat people around you is the same experience you're going to get back to yourself. So yeah, I think there are a lot of times, like I would say, like here in Eastern North Carolina, I've had pretty decent experiences with the VA myself. I haven't had any real issues. So yeah, again, I think it's all about how you kind of approach it and how you react to the situation or to the people around you that are trying to help the best that they can, because there are also resource constraints within the VA system as well. So, but real quick, Jack, before we continue, we need to take a little short break, and then when we come back, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about kind of the stuff that you've taken over the past and kind of put it into your ministry and what you've done within your ministry to help the youth in the next generation.
Will do.
All right. We'll be back here in a few minutes. Keep listening. Thank you.
And stripes, and the courage to stand and fight. Something's all worth fighting for. fight, and the courage to stand and fight. Some things are worth fighting for. Worth fighting for. Some things are worth fighting for. It's so worth fighting for. Worth fighting for. It's a tower high in the sky. A lonesome train whistle in the night. Yeah, I've got this tattoo of the stars and stripes. And I'm not afraid to stand and fight. Some things are worth fighting for. Worth fighting for. Some things are worth fighting for. It's so worth fighting for. Worth fighting for. Worth fighting for. Worth fighting for.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Bunkhouse. If you're just now joining us, my guest today, Jack Hager, Vietnam veteran. So before the break, he was talking about some of the stuff that he did while he was in the Army, some trouble he had gotten into post his military service, and kind of rebuilding himself into the ministry life. And so, Jack, if you could kind of walk us through some of the things that you've done within your ministry over the years, and some of the stuff that you've taken from whether it be time in your military service, or some of the trials and tribulations that you went through, and how you used that to kind of help incorporate that into to your teachings, and kind of getting people to be on the right track.
When I think of, I'll start with the military. A teenager, I met him when he was like 11 years old. He's now a lieutenant colonel. He's the wing chaplain at Dover. Okay.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
He and we spent a lot of time together when he was a kid, when he was a teen. We worked together in ministry for a while. Anyway, he called me up a few years ago, and he was at Malmstrom Air Force Base, where all the missiles are. And he said, Jack, would you like to come up here and speak to the men? Sure. Went up there for a week and a half and spoke all over the place, did a couple of church services. That was fantastic, wonderful. A couple of years later, he says, I'm in Guam. Would you like to come to Guam? Duh. Yeah. Went to Guam for 2 weeks. And a couple of years after that, he called me. He was at the Air Force basic training place, Lackland Air Force Base. And he said, would you like to come down here? I said, of course I'd like to come down there. Came down there, and that was just after COVID, kind of. So I spoke at various places to the APs, and anyway, and then on Sunday, they did church service for the recruits that were going through training. And because of COVID, they brought them in one class at a time, if you will. So I did 4 back-to-back services with most of the men and women who were going through basic. And I consider that to be one of the biggest honors of my life, to be able to share with them, and of course share some of my military experience, so they at least knew a little bit. And this guy Keith, he was stationed at Arlington for a while, and I didn't get to go there, but I keep hoping he gets assigned to Hawaii next time or something. But anyway, I've had chances to speak to military people, and obviously the one-on-one stuff. Primarily, my ministry is youth, and I use the Vietnam thing as an attention getter, and the prison thing. And a lot of times I'll introduce myself, even 30 years ago. I'm Jack. I'm a Vietnam veteran and an ex-con, and usually that brings about, you don't look like one. And I'll say, okay, and then I get to explain to them why I am one. I think. I was just talking to a friend. I talked to my wife the other day that people mean it as a criticism, I think, but I take it as a compliment. One of the things I've heard for years, not often, but often enough to wonder, is people saying, Jack, you're too transparent. And I say, what? What are you talking about? You don't have to go into sordid details. I don't want to make the drug life look good. I don't want to make combat look good. I don't want to make prison look good. But how can I be too transparent? I've got 4 children. One of my daughter is currently practicing a gay lifestyle. And I try to be careful with that, how I phrase that. She's currently practicing a gay lifestyle. And I share that, not because I'm proud of it, not because I'm ashamed of it, but because it's reality. And I don't think you'd be amazed, but a lot of people are amazed how many people come up to me after I share that and say, thank you so much. We thought we were the only ones. And, I think it kind of applies to guys that are and girls that are struggling with mental things. They think they're the only ones. They think, and if we could just be more honest, I'm not bragging that I have mental stuff. I'm not bragging that I'm an alcoholic. I'm not bragging that, but I want to be real in the hopes that maybe somebody can see, maybe I can talk to this guy. Maybe, or if God can help him, maybe he can help me. So with teenagers, I love teenagers because if I share something from the pulpit, if you will, afterwards they'll say, that really stunk, Jack. And an adult will come up and say, oh, that was such a wonderful sermon, Reverend Hager, and go home and have roast Jack for lunch. I love kids because they're honest. Not saying that all adults aren't. I love kids because they're open, and for whatever reason, even at my advanced age, I can still relate to them. And I think a lot of it is because I treat them seriously. I look them in the eye and I listen to them. And obviously my main priority is to get them into a relationship with Jesus Christ. But maybe they already are. Maybe they're resisting him. I want them to know that whether they accept my faith or not, I still love them. I still care about them. And let me hop on the hobby horse. I do not blame non-Christians for thinking that Christians are homophobic, for instance. Because that's the way we come across way, way, way too much. And I mean, there are some just idiots that make it their hobby horse, but there are some well-meaning people. I mean, I got to be true. I believe the Bible teaches that homosexual activity is sinful, as is gluttony, as is lying, as is gossip. And I don't know why I can't say that about homosexuality. I don't agree with your lifestyle, but that does not mean I hate you. My daughter and my wife and I talk frequently, and she knows where we stand. We're not going to hit her over the head with a 10-foot Bible. She knows where we stand, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but we are hoping and praying that she comes to faith in Christ and leaves that lifestyle. But she's our daughter. And even if she wasn't our daughter, she's a human being created in the image of God. And my job is to love her. And part of that love is to be honest and to say, no, yeah, that is sin. The same I would do to a gossip. I can't find a verse that says God hates gossips. The God hates homosexuals, but I can find a proverb that says he hates those who sow discord among the brethren, otherwise gossip. So again, I'm trying to do everything I can to when I address that particular subject to say, yes, it is sin, and it's just like any other sin, except for the fact that 1 Corinthians 6 seems to indicate that all sexual sin carries a different flavor to it because it's sin against the body. But
Yeah.
so is gluttony, so is lying, so is lust, etc., and so forth. Because I don't want a homosexual to think that he or she is beyond redemption. And most of all, I don't want them to think that God hates them or that I hate them. And so that kind of transparency, that kind of speaking shocks kids sometimes and offends adults sometimes. And you
Yeah.
can probably tell by now that I am not really I really don't give a rip if I offend you if I'm speaking the truth in love.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there, especially when it comes to like telling the truth, and especially to this day and age's youth. I think that's the biggest part is being extremely honest and transparent with them. I think gets through to them more than trying to sugarcoat things or to kind of gloss over certain areas, right? And that's one thing that I found too is with talking to other veterans or getting veterans comfortable with or letting them know that it's okay to talk about whatever's going on in their lives. Like I have to be honest. I have to open up and tell things about myself that maybe I probably wouldn't have 10 years ago. Right. But I
How
know
for
I
that?
need to do, but I know I need to because like you said, me sharing some of my stories, regardless of how bad they may seem, it could help somebody else come to the same light and know that hey, it is okay to talk about it. You know, it's nothing to be ashamed of. There is a way forward past those things. You know, and like you said, I think that honesty is like the first step of being able to get somebody to start opening up and understand what you are telling them.
I totally agree. It's just, uh, and it's rare. You know,
Yeah.
it sounds like I'm patting myself on the head, but it's so rare for somebody to treat not just teenagers, but somebody else not throwing away, but disregarding my faith, disregarding everything else. People are people, and
Yep.
everybody's carrying something. Everybody's got something going on. And I don't want to add to their misery. I don't want to add to their guilt or shame or whatever. At the same time, I don't want to facilitate or encourage or make it easy for them to continue in something that is self-destructive or, going back to my biblical roots, sinful. Uh, and I just think spending time being alert. For a while, my regimental commander in Vietnam was Colonel George S. Patton IV. You may have heard of his father. And he had a mantra. Do you ever see Apocalypse Now?
I have. It's been a while, but yeah, I have seen that.
Whoever wrote that movie knew Colonel Patton because Robert Duvall is Colonel Patton. But anyway, his mantra was stay alert, stay alive, stay alert, stay alive. And I'm sure it wasn't exclusive to him. It's a great way to survive combat. It's also a great way to survive life. You know, I never thought 15 years ago that part of my ministry to young people would be teaching them situational awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we live in that kind of a world. I'm a convicted felon. I can't carry a weapon. It's probably only been the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that I really wished I could carry a weapon because of the world in which we live.
Yeah.
And in that kind of a world, we need to love each other. We need to,
Yeah.
the Beatles weren't the greatest theologians the world had ever seen. I was with a group of teenagers the other day, and I said the Beatles, and I could see their blank look, and I said, "Oh, come on, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, still blank." And I said, "You poor socially deprived kids." But
Yeah.
the Beatles got it right once. All you need is love, and
Yeah.
everybody I bump into is created in God's image, whatever they are. That whether they're a hooker or a sex offender I meet in prison or the local drunk, if there's a way I can help them, it's my duty and privilege to help them. And we are so self-concerned and so self-centered, and that's not exclusive to non-Christians. It's Christians too. We get so wrapped up in ourselves and our little Mickey Mouse problems, or we shelter. We just stay in our little cubbyhole. We have our secret meeting of the saints, and we're the church, aren't we? We're going to wait for these people to come to us. Shut up. Get off your butt and get out there and go to them. But I might get stained. I might get shut. I just, yeah. One of the cool things about having cancer is if I really offend somebody, I can say, "Hey, give me a break. I'm on meds. Leave me alone." But I don't blame people for turning away from Christianity because of the way it's broadcast on TV. I can make you healthy and wealthy. Give me 10 grand and I'll give you 100 grand and all that kind of junk, because of the way too many people who identify as Christians treat non-Christians. So
Yeah.
I'm doing everything I can with the help of God to help young people see that, and to help young people see the danger of drugs and alcohol, etc. Because as you well know, it's a whole lot easier to do preventive maintenance than when they're 20 years old and strung out, or whether they're incarcerated, or whether whatever. If we can get them younger, we shouldn't be talking about that with young people. Shut up. Yes, we should.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
absolutely. Like my kids, I have 3 kids myself. My youngest, she'll be 13 this year. My oldest, she'll be 18 this year, and my son, he'll be 15 this year. And so, especially in this stage of age with technology and social media and stuff, and coming from an IT background myself, like I'm always trying to be honest and making sure that they understand the dangers of being online and interacting with folks online, especially if they don't know them personally, like how many issues there are around stuff like that. So again, it's about being honest about the dangers that are out there, and talking to your kids about those things. Because I think that's extremely important too, right? Because yeah, they're going to make mistakes. They're not going to always make the right choices, but neither did we. But at the same time, there's a lot more dangers out there today than there was when I was a kid in the 90s, or when you was a kid
my
in the 40s and
illustration
50s, right? Like,
my illustration of that is I had to get a couple of my buddies and go in the store and have them distract the clerk so I could swipe the Playboy.
yeah,
As even unintentionally
yeah,
picking up a phone or going online, all of a sudden, and you can't unsee it.
right.
And,
You're absolutely right.
I mean, that's a whole other subject, but porn is I think, the most disastrous drug addiction that we have, and it's everywhere.
Yeah,
And we all, whether it's porn or drugs or whatever, we all have this really wacky disease. It's not going to happen to me. It's
yeah,
not going to happen to me. Yeah, it will. And the Lord opened the door for me to do school assemblies for about 6 or 7 years. And it's kind of a sad commentary that Reverend Hager can't get into a school, but ex-con Hager can. And I'd go in and basically tell my story and just really stress personal responsibility. And
yeah,
if I had a chance to share my faith, I would do that. But I just think personal response, it's not my fault as an obscenity. It's, yeah, things contribute to it. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, combat contributes to a lot of junk. Being molested as a kid does,
yeah,
alcoholic parents, et cetera, and so forth. That all contributes, but you're not simply a product of your environment. And with or without faith, you can turn it around, but you got to make that choice. I'm going to
yeah,
do whatever it takes to get out of this, and then be man enough to ask for help, and suck that pride thing down and just say, I need help. And how do you do that? You contact me, you contact John, you contact somebody, and they can be a gateway to a way that'll revolutionize and quite possibly save your life.
yeah. No, I think you bring up a great point there. Like the self accountability piece is one thing that I've learned in my healing process and like my healing journey from some of the things that I've struggled with is it. being able to accept those and take ownership of those things, right? Whether it be um, alcohol use, infidelity, like those types of things, is own it, take responsibility for it, and then being able to own it and then move past that, make yourself better, right? And that's part of a healing process, like just like you just said too. It's part of the growth and getting to a better place.
One of my great regrets in life is that I never got to see the Eagles in concert. Okay. But they had a song, I think it was the flip side of Hotel California, called Get Over It. Have you ever heard it?
I don't think I've heard
Okay.
that one, but I'm gonna have to look that one up now.
You got to YouTube it. It's
Yeah.
if I had my way, it would be played every morning from every speaker in America. Your mom is too skinny and your daddy's too fat. Get over it. Get over it. Uh, I'd like to find your inner child and kick his little. Get over
Yeah.
it. It's a great tune anyway, and the lyrics are just man up, quit crying, don't be.
Yeah.
We're such a victim mentality. A victim of this, a victim to that, a victim of this, a victim of that. Your mama's too skinny
Yeah.
and your daddy's too fat. It's a great song, and I share it every time I can, just because it's true. You got to get over it. You probably are going to need some help to do that. But
Yeah.
don't identify. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a adult child of alcoholics. I'm a victim of sex abuse, and I wish I could fix all that with a wink of my eyes. I can't. But that's not your identity. That is not your reality. And I know there are pressures and people and forces that want to keep you in that little box. Get out of it. Break out of it. Oh, I can't. Yeah, you can. Start. The Chinese or whatever, the longest journey starts with a single step. Take that step, ask for help, pray for help, do something. But most of us need Jesus with skin on, and that's another person that'll walk alongside you and won't give up on you, and will kick your butt when you need it kicked, and will give you a hug when you need a hug.
Yeah, and I could promise anybody and everybody that's listening right now, I guarantee you, if you just paid attention and looked around, there's somebody in your circle or near you or close to you that would be that person for you. And if let's say if for some reason you don't have somebody like that, please reach out. I'll get you in contact with people, or if I can help myself personally, I will. But I could definitely get you in contact with somebody as well, that if you need any kind of assistance, but that's what we're here for. Folks like myself, like Jack, other veterans that I've talked to, like that's what we're here for, is to help out with those types of things.
Piggybacking on that, my email is simply jack.hager@gmail. And it's what I do. If you want to yell at me, that's fine. We can get in a discussion there. But if you have a question, anything else, and you feel maybe the anonymity of email will be helpful, shoot me an email. It's what I do. It's my job. It's my ministry. The cancer diagnosis has changed a little, some aspects of my ministry, but I'm still full time. Why retire from something you love? And you won't be a nuisance. You won't be a pest. I'd love to, quote unquote, talk to you through email for starters if you'd like to.
Jack, we are coming up at the top of the hour, and so we are a little bit out of time now today. Jack, I would definitely like to have you back on again, and I definitely want to have you on my pre-record releases that I do monthly, and get to be able to tell your entire story if you're up for that.
I would love to do it if I can real quick. After 40 years of counseling, I finally wrote a book. It's titled Captured by Grace. It's available at Amazon, etc. It might give you more of a overview of my background.
Awesome. I'll make sure and add that. I'll post that to my link tree and to my website so folks can know where to get it at.
Great. I've really, really enjoyed the time. I would love to do it again. And
No, absolutely.
Let's stay connected.
Yes, sir. Absolutely will, Jack. Thank you again. And everybody out there listening, again, you're not alone. I promise you, you're not. There's going to be people that are around you that love you and want to help you and see you be successful. And as always, be the light in someone's dark.
Hi, I'm Beaker with Military Broadcast Radio TV. We're your virtual MWR, bringing veterans radio, podcasts, gaming, animation, 3D printing, and a community that never leaves you behind. Download our Roku or mobile app today.
Wisdom to share if you listen this week, so pull up a chair and stay for a spell. We're heading down a trail where good stories dwell.